conecta corações, transforma realidades. Acreditar na energia que vem da cultura é acreditar que as histórias transformam os palcos, os ritmos e os cantos desse país. São nessas histórias que encontramos a alma e a diversidade de um povo. Celebramos essa diversidade, celebramos cada cor, cada voz, cada sorriso e
Tudo bom? E aí, como é que tá hoje? Tive uma noite difícil. Por quê? Eu tive muita alergia. Será que você tá alérgica a essa cabine? Estou piorando ao longo do dia, né? Então, não sei. Acho que já fica um pouquinho aberto.
Pode ser.
Porque, não sei, pode ser que seja o efeito do remédio vai baixando. Eu tomo de manhã, né?
Aham. Você trouxe comida hoje?
Não, eu trouxe um lanchinho, tenho de pagar isso.
Tá aberto.
Na valorização de diversas identidades brasileiras e na preservação de memórias. Onde toca um instrumento, um futuro desperta. Nas tropas de saberes, sonhos e oportunidades se concretizam. Dos projetos que todo mundo conhece, aos que todo mundo precisa conhecer, é valorizando a cultura que crescemos e evoluímos juntos. Instituto Cultural Vale.
Dizer que o Brasil é gigante não é um exagero, mas um país desse tamanho não se move sozinho. Ele conta com mais de 200 milhões de gigantes, como eu e você. Gigantes que saem cedo de casa todos os dias, com força, dedicação, coragem, pelos trilhos, estradas ou aeroportos. Gigantes que não diminuem diante dos desafios, que não têm medo de distâncias, nem do longo caminho até os sonhos acontecerem. Por isso, só uma gigante, como a CCR, poderia estar ao lado dos brasileiros no desafio de mover este país. CCR, 25 anos. Mover o Brasil para gigantes.
Olá, boa tarde.
Good afternoon, you all. We are starting the fourth day of activities at FLOOP. It's been very intense for the ones who are here, so it's been really marvelous to take part of this event. That is an idea of a festival of books and ideas and experiences that really enhances our experiences and our being. So I am conducting you in this extraordinary journey this year, paying homage and paying tribute to Beatriz Nascimento, such an important person for a more equalitarian society. And also adding that all our program is being transmitted live through YouTube and Futura channel. We are also counting on the Libras interpretation, simultaneous translation, and accessibility.
French and English. Headphones at the back of counters. Thank you.
So let's open our works with our first panels. and I'm sure that you are very enthusiastic to participate and contribute with Flupi. Quilombo of Beatriz Nascimento is something very important in the Brazilian history. From her researches, the history of Black people is being told for enslaved people and descendants. So, in this track of the free ones that lived in the Quilombos, to escape was the first step, not to be a fugitive, but to go after freedom. I am where my body is, said Beatriz Nascimento, that inspired the dictionary Afrodiasporic Women and Their Stories. So, to go against the history of white hands, we can affirm together with Beatriz that Quilombo dos Palmares was the first free state of Latin America. To create and build a Quilombo is to create. So we thank Rosinaldo Simoni, that is one of the idealizers of this dictionary. And also we have a lot of research in the Black feminism. So many of these stories will be born after and because of you. We also have partnership with the Federal University. Thank you very much for the extension courses students. So today we're going to have Afro-diasporic women and their stories, and we are going to think about the main strategies used by the Quilombola women to resist and survive during the period. To tell their stories reflect a continuous fight and struggle for equality in the civil rights. So let's go to the first panel. And I'm sure it's going to be marvelous. The participants of this panel are going to be Karina Faria, Patrícia de Carvalho, Erislane de Moraes, Cláudia Peclar, Rosinalda Simoni, Maria Edmaci Leite, Rosana Lesso e Cléria Medeiros. Mediation of Carlos Alexandre. Okay, you can come on the stage. Good afternoon, marvelous women. I'm Cláudia Alexandre. It's an honor to be here, to be touched by and with all of you, what we did every day. When she said this is the last panel about the Acadêmico Quilombo, because this activity of launching this biographical dictionary of 100 women and multiplying because we have 200 women talking. 100 women being biographed, and of course the writers that wrote their biographies. So we are keeping the legacy of Beatriz Nascimento, and it's so beautiful to see that this last panel, but it's not going to be the last one. We are talking about circularity, so certain it's going to generate other results. We are going to talk about Quilombola women, workers, post-slavery period, and our realities that still remain. And they are going to remain because we are going to have another dictionary, right, Thais? And next year, we are going to have another event with more 200 voices, 100 entries, and 100 writers to write them, about them. So I'm going to make the formal introduction because we are transmitting live this event. And I like to say that I'm one of the persons that is in the editing council of this book, of this dictionary, and to look at it, the fragments that were gathered in each of the writings, academical, or from knowledges that are born in these territories that are in the margin, but they are not anymore in the margin because we are writing. These entries are a sign that we can talk about us from us. This is also a legacy left by Beatriz Nascimento, Lélia Gonçalves, Teresa Santos, Evaristo, that was here yesterday. And she said, I accept, I completely accept being here and being honored. She that transforms our writing. So it's an honor. I come from the writings from of women from the terreiros de samba practices of Afro-Brazilian traditions, and I know the difficulty to access memories that are being raised that weren't written. Some memories we cannot access anymore. So this increases the importance of a dictionary like this. This is a very important topic to think how much the Black women were central for the resignificance of the humanity, and it's still central here in Brazil. And during their existence, they resisted, and above all, they elaborated sophisticated and ancestral codes to assure their existence and of the generations ahead of them. So during these days, we have gathered many fragments of ourselves. Beatriz Nascimento told us that we have to become visible, that we need image to recover identity, said Beatriz. We have to be visible because the face of one is the reflect of the other. The body of one is the reflect of the other. In each one, they reflect the reflection in all the Black bodies. So we biographed so many women, and we saw during these days, and today we are going to know a little bit more. So the biographical difficulty that I faced with the history of Chiasiata without a face, the representation not in the perspective of the entry that is in our dictionary, but I also talk about Maria Firmina dos Reis, represented for a long time by a white woman, was also biographed, but now we don't accept anymore. We want to see ourselves in our women. So she's important, and our panel is also important. He's going to talk about quilombolas and their workers after abolition, slavery abolition. Okay, I thought they were a little bit nervous, the participants of this panel, but I'm going to call them anyway. Okay, Karine Nayá Silva de Faria, that biographed Caltune. Patrícia Maria de Carvalho, biographed Clélia da Silva Costa, and is going to talk about Elisandra Botelho da Silva. Iris Lane Pereira de Moraes, biographed Maria América dos Santos. And Gláucia, in this first block, da Silva Campos Peclá, biographed Rosalinas. I'm going to ask you to have a first round as if we did in the other panels. But first of all, I'd like you to introduce yourselves and to tell us without so many spoilers, because people need to buy the dictionary, need to get to know the entries. So I'm going to ask you, we want to know, of course, how did you access these biographies? What really made you decide to biograph these women? And what this meeting, what this meeting gave you the opportunity of change for yourselves, in yourselves. So Kalina, you biographed Catunia. Hello, good afternoon to all the persons present here. I'm going to start by asking permission to the elders and to the youngest to talk at this moment. My biography was Katuni. I'm not going to talk too much about her because I think that the most interesting is reading. But for the ones who don't know, she's the voice of Zumbi. So if you want to know the Zumbi's grandmother, if you want to know about Zumbi's grandmother, the entry about her life is here in this dictionary, and we are here talking a little bit about her. When I was invited by Professor Tanya, she is part of the Lugar de Jesus group, together with Professor Rosinalda and Arielle. We decided, Andriele already was researching about a cartooning, the importance of researching and trying to bring was because of the silencing of her in the history. I am a historian, and in my graduation, we don't talk about women. I graduated almost 20 years ago, so we researched in the raising, in the silencing. So the attempt to write about them that we put here was to bring the story of this princess, this queen, this fighter inside this erasing and silencing. And when I bring the erasing and silencing, I also bring my story and the story of life of many of us here, that we build ourselves in this erasing. We have to constitute ourselves as black women inside this erasing system, social, family, etc. My family, as many others, comes from Goiás, and we grew up in the erasing of system of this woman. I knew I was a black child because of my parents, but in my family, this was not discussed. You are equal. You are the same as your other cousins and uncles and aunts. And we are not equal. We're not the same. And I'm not going to talk about this difference, but we have different stories, different backgrounds, and different experiences. So who is Alcatuni? What's her representativity, and where is she in my life? It's in the possibility of building a story inside this erasing process, our erasing process during our social construction until we get to books and works like this. Thank you very much, Kalina. Patrícia is going to talk about Clélia da Silva Costa and also Lisandra Botelho da Silva. She's going to explain why. How are you, Pat? Fine, Claudia. I'm going to greet the elders and the youngest, Father Oshossi, Reparé. So, Claudia, I wrote some things down here because I'm too emotional. I already want to cry, so you can read, no problem. I like to thank Thais, Lacheni. I wrote 2 entries because they called me to write one, and I said, okay, I'm gonna also write Kika's entry. And then I met Thais in the community of the GRE in Espírito Santo, and she invited me to write Dona Clélia entry, and both accepted. I wrote in a collaborative way. Dona Clélia and Kika, Lisandra Botelho, they are authors of their own entries. We wrote together. Here a little bit more distant because Kika is in Vila Velha, but Dona Clélia, we wrote together. In one afternoon, we wrote the entry telling a little bit of Dona Clélia trajectory. But before talking about this process, I need to make an announcement. Gathering our voices, I open making an announcement. The Quilombo do Baú, the Vale do Jequitinhonha, has suffered a violent attempt on November 11th and is asking for help once more. The aggressors shot the population and their families. The Quilombo do Baú, they are afraid, and the attacks the attacks are attributed to the landowners of the region that is trying to block the process of giving title to the community, the lands of the Quilombola. The community is regulated since 2016. Diane, Quilombola leadership of Baú, affirmed that her great-grandfather, with 102 years old, has the memory of meeting his great-grandfather. So it's an ancestral relationship of more than 300 years. Brazil, according to the census of 2022, has 1,327,000 people living in quilombos, but the quilombola population that resides in lands that are owned by them is just 4.4% of this population, and they didn't obtain the definite titles of their lands in the formal process of regulating these lands. The struggle for survival and for the ownership of this land is what gathers us. We are attentive. I'm going to send this announcement, this text to you. Please try to publish in your social networks because this violence against the Quilombola population is recurrent. It has still happened for decades, and something must have been done and must be done. We have only 4% of Quilombola communities with their lands regulated. Repeat the name of the Quilombo. Quilombo do Baú.
Quilombo do Baú is in Vale do Jequitinhonha, in the state of Minas Gerais. Dona Cleia and Dona Kika are Quilombola women, are leadership in their Quilombos. Dona Cleia is a jongueira, a master of jongo. It's a jongueira that worked in the Quilombola struggles and fights for its recognition. And today the community was impacted by that crime that happened, that environmental crime that happened when the dam in Minas Gerais was broken and all the waste was dumped into the rivers and into the cities until the Atlantic Ocean, impacting the community because the greater community is between the Ipiranga River and the sea. So they are a traditional community of fishers. And from 2015 until now, the community had its way of life totally destroyed. You can imagine you were a fisher, and out of the blue, you cannot fish. You cannot, sell your fish. You cannot, not only the fish, but Tabola, with which they were creating their artifacts, and you're gonna plant something in a land, and you cannot use the river water anymore. You have to wait for the rain, and until now, that community is receiving gallons of water from companies, those criminal companies who generated this incident. And I witnessed this many times. If you go to the if you go to the vegetable garden, if you use the river water, you're gonna burn the land because there are many minerals in that water due to this dam that was broken. And especially in the state of Minas Gerais, the mining is impacting the life and the land and everything in Minas Gerais. And besides all these problems coming from these environmental accidents, there's the reparation process, which is very complex with this such an amount of money coming into the community. And Dona Cleia is one of these warriors that has always been a warrior fighting in life. And then she arrives at this point of her life and faces this crime again. This happened in 2015, and now we are in 2024, and there are still people that hasn't received their rights. So who is going to recover this river and the sea? Is there any interest in recovering the sea and the river and the sea? So she's one of these waters, as you can read in the entry. She's a master of jongo, jongueira, quitandeira, biscoiteira. She bakes cookies. She works at the company, the cookie company inside the Quilombo. She works a lot. She does a lot of things. Kisses, so many kisses for you, Dona Claire. Unfortunately, you couldn't come, but they are there watching it through YouTube. And Kika, these are the women of my life. They make me feel so emotional. Kika, Elisandra Botelho Frazão de Almeida. Before all, she's a friend, a dear partner. Kika is a young lady, my youngster, my youngest, and she lives in Boqueirão, Quilombo, in Santíssima Trindade, the first capital of Mato Grosso, at the border. And Kika is a source of inspiration. You know, those women who, Roda Baiana, they creative fast, they act. She created the first alphabetization course for people. She's a syndicalist. She is a bus driver. She is a cooker. She's a chef. She creates animals. She's an entrepreneur. She creates cattle. She collaborates. She's always close to people, helping people, and makes so that all our lives are better. And she was a fundamental person, a fundamental figure. And now concluding my speech, I'm telling you about how I came across these women. I worked for 10 years in Quilombo, remanescente do Boqueirão. Oh my God, I'm so emotional right now. I'm sorry. For 10 years, I worked in Vila Velha da Santíssima Trindade. I am looking forward to going back to move on with the works that I developed there. I'm an archaeologist with a degree in anthropology. I developed together with the Rede de Arqueologia Negra, together with Iris. It's a reference in terms of archaeology, especially for our younger population that are dominating the scene, building Black epistemology, and we are proud of them. And that's how it worked. I was researching on Quilombos to be together with my ancestors. I'm from São Paulo, from the outskirts of the south zone of São Paulo. And only Quilombada, as Beatriz would say, And in these Quilombomentos, I went to the São Paulo University in '96, and I arrived in a classroom with a lot of people and only 3 Black people. And after so much struggle, so much struggle, so many fights, and we were able to change the situation, and we have to go on fighting for the right of our young population to be there at university. And this religion, the Afro-Brazilian religion, I was introduced to this religion by my family, as many of us were, and I went to have this elective discipline, this elective subject in university. And when I tried to understand the materiality of our ancestors, I realized that this was the way. Not only documents written by colonizers about Black community, these are objects. These are concrete things that our ancestors used. These are modified landscapes. Archaeology is not about only about materials, but all the context. We have this context of indivisibility, you know, and the archaeological Afrodiasporic sites, they are considered of low visibility in terms of archaeology. So I went to the master course in the same city. Kika and the family followed my process. They supported me. And we were there trying to develop a theory from that study together with the terreiros of African culture and about the use of plants. And we proved that the termed plants that are there, you know, trees, other plants planted in the term in certain places of those terreiros, they can indicate the presence of archaeological sites. And this is very important for archaeology as a whole, and will be important for our young population studying it. We have archaeologists who are Quilombolas, and they are going to these sites to do research with older generations and identifying archaeological sites through these plants. I went back to to do my PhD with to study ecological participation or a participative ecology, and I could collaborate with other people. And at that moment, we developed the visibility of the black. And I want to to criticize this terminology. And I was discussing that the ones who have low visibility are not the sites or the archaeologists, because they are in their majority white people that don't know about the African history, the Brazilian history, because they didn't learn it at school nor at the university anywhere. So we need more black archaeologists in university and producing knowledge, because that's what I said. Materiality is fundamental for the knowledge of our ancestors. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to send kisses to Donna Claire, to Kika, and kisses to our mobs, the mobility team of the Degrado. I'm coming. Thank you, Paty Marinho. Now, Elislane Moraes, who biographed Maria America dos Santos. It's up to you. Good afternoon. I'd like to start greeting our ancestors, asking permission to use the word, the blessing of our younger and older, and Ameked from Yelaxé in Belém do Pará. I'm part of Negarco, just as Paty mentioned, the Black Network of Archaeology. I'm from Amazon. I come from Pará. And I work with the archaeology inside the African diaspora, just as Paty mentioned now about this ancestral material, and particularly in the Amazon region. I think this struggle, this fight about saying that the Amazon is also black, because there is an Afro-diasporic presence that is erased and canceled in this region. So this is where my work comes from. We don't know our history from the books and TV, We have references that are already consecrated, that are used from the last century. We don't have the archaeology of Africa or of the African diaspora in our curriculum and in university, and we see ourselves there in the Amazon region without having access to these stories. And we have we get really upset, but also very motivated to search for these stories. My grandparents are migrants coming from the south of Bahia. They were expelled from their territories. They go to Amazon, in the 70s, in this process of a lot of mobilization of these migrants around great projects in that specific region. And I have a special relation with the land being rooted, in Marabá, my home city, the city of the migration. It's a category that explains and speaks a lot to this situation. We are always being displaced, trying to find this story that makes us strong, that gives us territory, gives us our land, and makes us feel rooted and that we belong. So, how did you come across Dona Maria? Dona Maria, in this case, we will got to know the old America, this matriarchy of the Quilombos. And in the sense, is, as you said, as you asked, how we got to know her. She's inside of us because she's this quilombola who will establish herself in the margins of Rio Capim, the sidelines of that river. This is a region now went through a very strong colonial process. The great rivers, River Acará, Moju, Capi, they are all quilombola territories. And there, between São Domingos do Capi and Aurora do Pará, there's this territory where in the 19th century you have documents proving that they say that there was this Engenho do Aproá, this farm producing sugar, this factory producing sugar cane, using sugar cane and exploring the region. And Dona America's ancestors are there, creating quilombos around this territory and around Aproaga. And that's why this population there was called Aproaga. And when I go there in the year 2014, we find this historical site with ruins, totally full of quilombos, used by the community, 5 communities there. Dona America was the matriarchy of Taperinha. We have also a Benevides, Salvemirim, and Pichuni, Alegre Vanos. Pichuna is where you have the sugar canes, and on the right side of the river you have the ruins of this factory and a territory where you have Nova Ipixuna. When Rose asked us to bring this contribution from the Amazon region, I thought exactly in Dona America. And I was thinking about, the fact that we don't have sources. We work with oral stories, with narratives, and we are going to produce data, We find documents, birth certificates, death certificates. These documents provided by the families, and they become sources. And we start to build this memory. Although we haven't done so much about giving Dona America recognition. She's about around 90 years old. She's very tall, thin, and very expressive, very conscious of her struggle. And she places herself as descendant of the Black Dantes, Pretos Dantes, as they are called. And she's this narrator. She tells this story about aquilombamentos and territories. We have the historical registers connected to Taito Gil Herculano dos Santos, an former enslaved of the 19th century. She gives body to this process of being in the land. She crosses 200 years, and the Quilombola strategy was this process that happened through these communities of Pretos Dantes in each spot of the territory. that was negotiated within fights and struggles through the Capim insurrection, and they achieve to negotiate and actually have some land, and they sought to create network of relations. And Dona America inherited this all this story within of this within this brotherhood, this sisterhood where she belonged, and she brings up all this experience of where I am, and where I am is my Quilombo. She crossed all these generations. She has 10 kids and more than 50 grandchildren and great grandchildren. So this is her power. And she makes us strong because she's in the land. She could guarantee through generations this Quilombola presence there. Teaching her kids that they should not divide, and they should not share the land. And I've been working since my master course with these communities. This is this Sankofa archaeology. We look back in the past and get what's important for the fight, to fight for the territory. This memory of achieving and achieving to have the land and remaining in the land. We have many social environment conflicts, but we recognize the memory that she has there, that she strengthens these preto-dantes and their fights. Glaucia Thais will talk about Rosalinas. Who are Rosalinas and how did they get into you after you biographed them? Good afternoon. Rosalinas. I met them in Piauí when I was working with the cultural. When I was studying this cultural heritage in Morro Alto and other municipalities and I don't remember their names. But Rosalinas and Marta, please. Rosalinas, you don't want pictures, right? No, Rosalinas, they showed up in this moment when I was studying this cultural heritage in these municipalities. And the other one is Dom Inocêncio, the other municipality. It's because I travel a lot and I forget all those names of the places I visited. And one of the things that most called my attention was the fact that they were ahead of a movement that was questioning the building of the biggest park in the region, the archaeological park. They were questioning because, they were talking about something that is very important today, and which is culture and climate change. And they were back then already talking about it. So this I started to think about so many things, and I started to establish connection with them because I also want to understand about all those changes that were going on and why the Quilombo was suffering with this archaeological park that was being built there. And also this debate about culture and climate change. In the countryside of Piauí, they were already thinking about it. And why they were thinking about it? Why did they need to debate? Because they needed to give support to other quilombolas from other quilombos, Consumidouro, Baixo da Onça, Pitombeira, amongst others. To warn them that in that moment the construction of that park would impact their culture. The aeolic energy is moved by the wind, right? But the wind was impacting the candles during the Romaria, during this pilgrimage. And I forgot the name of the bird. This bird that that helps in the communities. These birds were being deviated from their trajectory to the communities, so it was kind of affecting all the environment there, and that caught my attention because beyond the fact that we couldn't know about these local issues, I was there to, execute, to perform a work at that time. And from that moment on, I decided to establish a relationship with them. And afterwards, I write this entry. And what changed? Many things changed. I wrote down some things because I don't memorize things but very well. It's a lot of information. So what have I learned with this entry? I learned that they were elaborating life projects by a communitary action. And there is a concept that is very interesting in favor of these public policies is to be in favor of this collective life and the maturity of this collective life.
What is it, Oswaldina? Is to mature. So all this trajectory of struggle since 66 is to mature the idea and also among their peers in the other quilombolas and municipalities of the region. Well, besides that, another sentence that captured my attention. We are connected by the wind of mothering in times of distinct umbilical cords. We are connected by the womb of mothering in times of distinct umbilical cords. What does it mean?
Obrigada. Oswaldino, o que significa isso?
What does it mean? Is that they never got married, they never had children, and they treat the other members of the quilombolas, they treat and operate in the condition of mothers of them, for them, guiding, contributing with suggestions, calling for fighting, for the fight. So they became these mothers in this region. Well, another issue that caught my attention and I learned with them, just to conclude. If we think about the transversal perspective, what they search in this struggle, participation at CUTI, the workers, the labor's unit, they search for a collective assertivity. These are their words. Collective organicity. Yes, because we are here trying to use our heads as much as possible to create concepts, and they already have the concepts ready. So they start to fight for schools in the quilombos, and they want in all the other quilombos of the region. It wasn't easy but they walked 35 kilometers to go to school, and also in the churches, because this movement was born in the church. In 79, they create the church service in the Quilombo. 85 is inaugurated the first school of the territory. But another thing that captures my attention and that I learned by writing this entry, Maria Rosalina talked a lot about this. She is very brave, and she also talks in a classy way. He says all this effort to walk 35 kilometers was to resist and exist. They walked 35 kilometers to exist. And to conclude, in 96, they're going to acknowledge themselves as Black women. They were part of this discussion in the Labor's Union, but only in 96 that they acknowledge themselves as Black women. In the moment in which they entered in the Black movement in the Northeastern, that they are going to see themselves as Black women, because they didn't do before. And the most interesting is that they formulated a letter to Fernando Henrique Cardoso, president at the time, to ask him to take care of the Quilombos in the state of Piauí that were completely forgotten. Piauí was a very forgotten region, and this letter didn't have any results, but they didn't give up the resistance to existence. That was Valdina Estelle. They didn't give up, and nowadays and recently they informed me that they managed to have the certification of 266 quilombos in the state of Piauí. Sorry, my throat. It's such a long time that I don't speak in public. This last information really warms our heart, and it's the result of the struggle and resistance of these women in these Quilombo territories. When we discuss the movement of Black women, I think it's of a great sensibility. The movement of Black women giving highlight to these Quilombola women. They are inserted in the movement of Black women with this highlighting, the highlight of the importance they have for our lives to conserve and to give visibility to territories that are forgotten in their public policies. We know exactly what's the place where they put. Today that we are in the SOS, Quilombo do Baú, because we still witness violences against these existences. Rosalina, because they are sisters, right? We didn't say. Rosalinas, because two women, was Valdina Rosalina dos Santos and Maria Rosalina dos Santos, that bring us the knowledge about living collectively to exist. This is something so mature. It's a knowledge that we don't have to elaborate concepts. It's a knowledge that subverts these concepts that were created without considering our existence in this territory. So we are going to conclude this first block, this first round. Let's have our official picture. Pat would like to say something. No, just to make an announcement. We are talking about the reminiscent communities of Quilombo, but I'd like to talk about the struggle of mobilization in Saracura, in São Paulo, where it was identified an archaeological site and the struggle for non-erasement, and also archaeological site of Cais do Valongo. I'm working here in the updating plan of the management, and the ones that are from outside would like to walk around the Cais do Valongo and the archaeological site, you can talk to me and we can go together there. Thank you, Fatima. You're connected with us in our struggle. Fatima is our reference when we talk about black archaeology, and when we faced a problem in the region of Bexiga that was considered as an Italian neighborhood, but it truly is a black neighborhood where black families descended of the enslaved population that were living in that place formed the Quilombo. And in the process of hygienization of the city, they were translocated and gave all that space to the Italian immigrants. When they displaced in São Paulo a school of samba to build the subway, they found an archaeological site of the black population, tools and plates and a lot of things and objects of the black population that used to live there, and there's a richness. So there is a movement, and party started working, talking about the black archaeology and how much it's important for these territories, for these archaeological sites where we had the black civilization. Our traces were going to be thrown in the garbage, and that's what we want to combat. So we're going to conclude with our questions because based on the suggestion of many women, we established a conversation body to body, face to face, and a question body to body. So you're going to have contact with all of them so we can keep our program on time. We're going to have many participations here on stage. And to give chance to all of them to speak, we're going to leave the questions for the body-to-body ones. You and Rosie, okay. So thank you very much. I'm going to thank Kalina, Patricia Marinho, Iris, and Glaucia. Thank you very much, girls. We're going to be back soon. And at the end, we're going to take our official picture. Roll of applause. Roll of applause. We want to hear a lot of applause because this is our last panel about the biographed women in our dictionary. Now, Rosinalda Torres da Silva, biographed Maria Correia da Silva. Maria de Maci, biographed Procópia Santos. Rosana Falcão, Ana Patrícia Souza, Alexandrina Carvalho, and Kenia Érica Guzmão Medeiros, that biographed Maria Grampini. Okay, you can come onto the stage, take your seats. Let's conclude with a golden clip, our panel. We are reliving not only the stories of women, but also the legacy of Beatriz Nascimento. So the question is, what made you choose the woman that you biographed and how their trajectories are inside of you, talking about ourselves and how we transform when we meet existences. And as Lélia Gonzalez says, when we find and meet common experiences, if you identify it with them, with their trajectories, it was so difficult not to identify. And then at the end, I'd like to reinforce the importance of being here, sharing our writings and the knowledges of other women through our political attitude. Okay, I'm going to start with Kenya. Erika Guzmão Medeiros. Maria Crampino was her biographed woman. So, how was your decision? How do you choose this woman to biograph? And what transforms you in this process? Thank you very much, Claudia. Good afternoon. I like to start by thanking Thais. Thais called me to be part of this beautiful project. Thank you, Rosie. Everyone that is working for us being here today, incredible staff. We are not only being received and respected, we are being welcomed in a way that I have never been in another event. So thank you very much, staff, especially Assambe. Wonderful. So I'm a woman from Goiânia, an autistic woman. I have to say this because it has to do with a very difficult process of recent acceptance, and also because of my child, also an autistic child that is in Goiás. She's sick right now, but I came for her to give her an example. And I come from a family, like many of us, a racialized family in many ways, with people of all colors. I have black grandparents. I have a more white mother, what we call mixed or parda, and this black descendancy was silenced. When it was mentioned in this whitening process tone. So I faced more vividly with these issues in my graduation when I was graduating in history in the State University of Goiás. When I graduated, there was the law 10,689. The law existed, but it wasn't applied. Even in the history graduation, I didn't have much access to events or contents related to the black population theme. But I come from a town called Formosa around Brasília. And I had the opportunity to go for the first time in the city of Goiás, the old capital city. And when we go to Goiás, it's sad. There's an expectation regarding the Cora Coralina's house. And so, arriving at the city of Goiás, I saw everywhere in the city small dolls made of tissues with a lot of very colored applications, and I didn't know what they were about. So I went to the old house of the bridge, the Museum of Cora Coralina, and there captured my attention when the guide showed a kind of a basement where a woman had lived inside Cora's house. This woman was Maria Grampin. And I was intrigued. Who was this woman? Why did she live in that basement? I went back with this information that that woman was Maria Grampino and she was the reference of those dolls that I had seen.
The story of who this woman was, because she was part of the official story. I was gathering traces of the memory circulating in the city, and it's very contradictory. There are many different versions of how she lived, signed by vulnerability, how she was, her personality. There are many versions, contradictory. They are still around in the city of Goiás. And it's important to say that today Maria Grampinho is a cultural symbol of the city of Goiás, its heritage, and many women have an earning by selling these dolls of Maria Grampinho. People have created documentaries, projects for basics education. So today, Maria Grampinho is still around the streets of the ex-capital, the former capital. There is a lot about her in my entry. I wrote the details. I invite you to read. Thank you. Thank you, Kayla. Kenya, you didn't say what transformed you when you wrote about her. I think it was a chance, Claudia, to honor the work of the historian, to tell a silenced story, to come closer to, those rare sources, various versions, this vulnerability condition, and start to look at this life that is cultural heritage chosen by the community. It's very public, so it changed me in this sense, gave me the opportunity to exert in a mass way my job as historian. Please, more applauses to her. Rosana Falcão Lessa, Ana Patrícia Souza, and Alexandrina Carvalho, who are and how they changed you. Good afternoon. I'm here to rectify and thank Professora Rosinalda and Professor Thais for this book in a very necessary moment, because the story becomes obligatory as the study of women and obligatory for the basic education. And thank all the education and the organization of this event, and in a special way, all of you for having a patient with us and being attentive. I'm Rosana Falcão. I come from the Recôncavo Baiano as Beatriz Nascimento. I am a Black woman from the Northeast, and a small seed that was planted just like Beatriz, that in the 20th century was already claiming for our voice, demanding the right that we have to speak on our behalf and report our experiences and question hegemonic images that the Black population that were used to describe the Black population. So Beatriz had this social role, and amongst other ancestors that bring up discussions that are present today. And we have to highlight that these discussions come from far behind. This thing that we say that our steps come from far ago, and we should never allow this erasure of these people and histories. As a historian, I think the history course is very special, because nobody chooses history just because they like history. We always do it because we feel committed. People who choose to study history are the ones who want to understand some sensible issues there are and processes ongoing, and they are discussing collectively, aiming at building a just and equal society. So during these days of this event, I was so touched, especially with the history of these women biographed that are intertwined with the life of the writers. As our previous colleague said, they have a way of resisting to the impacts of colonization, racism, racialization, genocide of black population. So our political bodies are always, we are always fighting against this naturalization of exclusion. And when we break this harmony of genocide and exclusion, we have a system that tries to place us aside, tries to erase our writings and our memories. So this event is very important. Besides gathering many intellectuals from various fields, it's bringing up discussions uh, that are signed by many biographies that were forgotten. So Ana Patrícia Souza and Alexandrina Carvalho are black women from Recôncavo Formageiro. The Recôncavo then produces the smoke that is used, that produces something that is going to be used during the trade of these slaves. And by the context of the moment when they were born, and I bring many details of their experience and the concept of family, of black families, and a discussion that we did is related to what it is to be a woman, the general concept that we have of what it is to be a woman, and black women usually don't fit in this concept, in this concept that was built in the west side of the world. And the majority of my writings stimulates us to rethink and think about the way the history was written in this tortuous way. And I'm from São Gonçalo dos Santos in Bahia, and there was no books written about cultures, Afro-religious cultures, Afro-Brazilian cultures, and the story of the city was tied to rich people, that were governing the place, and there was nothing written about this, about social justice, for instance. And I work with these black women, and we work with and not about black women, because when I'm talking about them, I'm talking about myself and about all the people that are fighting for a just and equal society. And we have to think that the history is a political field. We have to choose who we're going to write about, who is going to be excluded, who is going to be erased, and we should rethink about these issues of denaturalizing violence and racism itself, because when we denaturalize these colonial concepts that formed us. So we agreed on not giving you spoilers so that you can buy the book and read it. And besides stories, this book will conduct you through methodological structures to change the context that we live in now. And from the moment we understand that political history will discuss who will be excluded or marginalized or exalted and praised, we produce a very deep impact in our context. And when I talk about the women working with tobacco in São Gonçalo dos Santos, where I come from, I'm talking about people who were, carrying this guilty because they were not able to fit in this context of a bourgeois family. They did not have access to education, and they start to understand that they are inserted in a society that was built to exclude them, to erase them. This social understanding generates social justice because they understand that their experiences, their place in the world was built so that that will never leave these places where they were placed. I just wanted to say that we are running out of time. So I'm going to conclude now. So the social role of the historian, of this student, please read, write, read the book, enjoy these wonderful stories, understand the context, and I hope they will be methodological material for you to build and impact the context where you are now. I'm gonna go back to you to and ask you to talk about this reflect because Beatriz said that we reflect each other to become visible, and I wanted to tell you what this reflected in you when you wrote about these women. How did you start to see yourself? You didn't say about what was yours in this biography. I think everything, our stories. I meet black women from the Northeast in a context, in a very black context, but there are that is, but it is turned. Let's say it's aiming at praising what's ours, and not to exclude us. So I believe that working with these women, as Angela Davis has, will help us build this revolution in history, in methodology, and in our understanding as human beings that deserve dignity and other possibilities and ways of existing and resisting in a very extremely violent place and perverse, where we unfortunately have to be always fighting and existing. Thank you. Rosana Falcão. Now, Maria Ednaci biographed Procopia Santos. How did you come closer to her? And how did you exchange existences with her? Good afternoon. I I want to say about my origin. I'm Quilombola, and I came to talk about Quilombo, Prata and Ouro Fino. I come from the north of Goiás, today called Tocantins State, between Quilombo, Cavalcante, and Goiás. There is this other Quilombo with all these communities from Tocantins. I want to thank Professor Thais, my tutor, and Professor Rosinalda, and also my co-author, Sonilda Aparecida. I want to thank also Floop, and I want to make a connection with the theme of this event that brings a memory of a point of where I met Yaya Procopia dos Santos Reis. This theme is a title of a song of my father, who is Suceiro. Yaya Procopia is a dancer of Susa. And I want to quote part of the song that says, Susa, it's a dance that where people dance in circles. And Procopia, this woman, dancer of Susa, in the Kalunga territory, a woman of fight, deliverer of children in favor of her people who did not go to school but was in favor of her people. Said prayers, talked about planning, and was born in 1933, mother of 3 kids, grandmother to grandchild, and great grandmother of 30 great grandchildren. The only Goiana to win a Nobel Prize in 2005. She was awarded a Nobel Prize because she was fighting against the state governor since he wanted to buy a dam, to build a dam in the Rio Paraná, in Paraná River, and would destroy all the Quilombola community. And I bring the narrative of Yaya Procopia to all women in Brazil. Declaimed to all women in Brazil, as she used to say, I have courage to fight, health, to have all you wanted. You want to have, and I trust God above all. And Procopia knows about her importance. And as a portrait of this woman, I introduce you the book, The Quilombola Girl, a Menina Quilombola. This book is about this woman that I, as author and Maxwell co-author, bring to you, introduce to you. This book will be found in the website of Editora Pangeia. And I also want to say that getting to know Mother Procopia was something that made me feel free. It happened through my colleague. My father, Suceiro, is from Quilombo Cocantis, and she was from Quilombo Calunga, known by all of you. We were connected by music, and I was introduced to her as Suceira, as Susa dancer. If you want to know more about Yaya Procopia, of these women of intertwined lives, please buy the dictionary. You will find the stories. Thank you for the opportunity. And she was also, being the marketer of this dictionary. It's a beautiful story. We're going to conclude this last panel of our participation about the dictionary with the Professor Rosi Correia da Silva Simoni. Olashini. She's going to talk about Maria Correia da Silva. And it's very important because during the event, we saw how people were thanking us and the gratitude they showed. So I'm going to ask Professora Thais to come here and sit in that chair. Please, Professor. We have talked so much about your strength in this project. You escaped from the stage, but we are not going to let you out. This is the last panel. Breaking protocols. Sit down. I think this is also your place together with us. And we have honored so much you, Professor Rosinalda. And now we are going to hear the biography that she wrote, the biograph that she chose. And another important thing is her being also a Quilombola woman. This panel pays tribute to Quilombola women and workers of the post-abolitionistic movement. So I'm going to pass the floor to you, Professor, to give the final remarks. Good afternoon, everyone. For me, when I wrote this entry, I think that I psychographed because it was a kind of an automatic writing. Because, well, first of all, I'd like to ask the permission, the blessing of my mother. My mother is seen there in the Quilombo. So this biography that I bring was a transgenerational movement. I'm struggling with the construction of the historical dossier of my Quilombola community that has the title of the Palmares Foundation, but not yet the official one from the government. We are waiting this for a long time because they don't give money to liberate. They don't have an anthropologist to do it. But let's
we're going to count on the archaeological part, and I'm making all the historical survey to base the process. Because people don't know and the government don't know is that we don't need them to exist. Helping or not, we exist and resist, and we throw on their faces our history. So the woman I'm going to bring, she's an actress. Maria Correia da Silva, my mother. Ana Pete Barroso, my grandmother, that I lost five months ago. And my great-grandmother, Benedita Correia da Silva, that died was 77 years old, the godmother of my daughter. These three women have in common that they are all daughters of Quilombo Agua Limpa, 70 kilometers from the city of Goiás, World Heritage, and it's a Quilombo that now has 58 families that still live in the territory and that conserve naturally because they are not worried about proving that. They preserve their culture, their relationship with the land and their traditions. What do they have in common? No. Okay, Grandma Anna and my great grandmother, they were worried about staying in the land until their death. But my mother, for many reasons, and one of them financial reasons, she was obliged to migrate to the city with 5 young children. My parents, they are not literate, and they were married when they were very young. They were cousins, so that's something very common. From this marriage, they had 7 children, and I'm in the middle, right in the middle. When I say that I'm a crossing road woman, I'm not kidding. So, in this trajectory of going to the city, the next city was Goiás. And my mother, that was a rural worker, not literate, she started working in the kitchen. So what I bring in this entry, I call this entry, call us by our names, domestic workers and social visibility. What I bring in this entry is a very strange story that how these women and children are treated in the environment of the middle class, the houses of the middle class. So, for example, I went to work when I was 7 years old as a babysitter. So my boss, the mother of that child, had the courage to leave that baby with me. But I did well my job. So it's my reflection about how children are treated in this context, how much they are victim of all kinds of violence, like hunger, being sexually molested, being spanked physically. That's what happens inside these houses, at least in my state, with these black children that are between ashes invited to work in the family houses, the middle class family houses. So in this entry, I also would like to bring the ancestrality besides the transgenerality, to pass the task of taking care of the house, being babysitter, wash the clothes, and cook that I learned, and the other one ancestrality and the care with the land. I'm very privileged because I was born of 3 mothers. My mother had me, gave birth to me on a Friday, 6:30, 26 January 1965, by the hands of my great-grandmother, Benedita, that really supported helped delivering all the children of that region. So I had 2 turns of the umbilical cord in my neck. In my tradition, when it happens, there's a lot of rights that you have to do and to pay because to have this child for 7 years old on earth. So we did a lot of things in the rites, and on that day they baptized me and they offered me to Saint Domingos, the saint that take care of the hanged one. All children of my community that are born with the umbilical cord around their necks, they are given to Saint Domingos Saint, and also Santos Reis, the devotional saint in my region. I'm from the Orixá tradition. I'm the daughter of Egbel Modô, that is in the city of Goiás, who is connected to Ilia Bonfonjá, where I have Robson Jodé, which is the son of Mother Stella de Oxós, and also in the house of Nudua in Nigeria. So in the ancestrality issue, I want to highlight the spirituality. All 3 women are medium, and my great-grandmother and my grandmother, they have a wonderful saying. That when we felt bad, we would say, I don't feel well. Where does it hurt? In my stomach. Oh, okay, so let's take a medicine. And where are we going to take the medicine? Okay, in São José's pharmacy. Everyone who wants go there and take it. So we always had something as a medicine to the others. So all these women, they dominate the issue of the herbs and mediunity. So my mother took care of Umbanda Terreiro since I was a child. Destiny wanted me to migrate to the Protestant churches. I have been everything, Catholic, Protestant. I was a worker. I used to pray for people. I had visions, and then I went back to Umbanda because this is my place. 24 of Umbanda, almost 10 initiated in the Orixá tradition. What else these women have in common? Okay, the pride, and the desire to take care. So in my family, women smile a lot, but smile not too much. So when you see the women in my family very serious, it's because maybe they are going to fight with you. But also, they smile a lot. They are observers and very proud of themselves. Grandmother Anna, I recorded the last videos some months before she died. She was the eldest one in the Quilombo. She used to start. She used to say, nobody knows about the clean water, agua limpa, besides me. And she used to say that she was the most beautiful one. And I loved this because it was a very high self-esteem. But my mother was the opposite, very closed, very timid, the daughter of Omolu, but very wise. I cannot talk about this part because I cry. But I conclude saying, but I'm not concluding anything because who concludes is Oshu. But I can say that to write about this gave me the possibility to see my mother. I have always been very much like her. And this generated a lot of conflict because I was like her, but I was more daring. Since I was a child, I was beaten, I was punished. And another thing, she would say, you're never going to be a good domestic worker because you are always responding to your bosses. And so, and I always responded. The first time my boss tried to beat me, I kicked her and left the house. And when I got home, I didn't tell her because I was going to be beaten. So I was never a good domestic worker because I was never domesticated. And my mother, to keep the kitchen right and food at home, she would support many things. She would put up with many situations. But I think that it's important to say, and I bring here, something that it's important to say is a sentence of Adélia Prado where she says, "My mother thought this was so sophisticated. The most sophisticated thing was feeling." My mother was like that. She didn't accept us working as domestic workers if we couldn't study. So we used to work in the morning and studied in the afternoon. Because she used to say that if we could read and write, nobody would ever steal from us anymore. The majority of my brothers and sisters studied until until the high school. And my first husband left me with my child, my daughter, that was 4 years old, and he made me a favor because me and my child lived many adventures together because I went on and I went into the law university and history university during the 90s when there wasn't anything for us. So I kept many of my material. I concluded high school with my child in my arms. And then they gave me a credit card with 500 reais because I was in the first 10 places. I didn't conclude the law course. The professor has expelled me in the third week because I told her that I couldn't buy the book if I could photocopy. And he looked at me in a very strange way, and I never came back. And then in history course, my first question that I made, the professor answered me, "You are not washing clothes in the river, by the river. You have to talk Portuguese in the right way." And I told him that I didn't want to. So in this sense, I was the first of the Quilombo, the first historian, the first professor, the first archaeologist for a long time in the state. And I continue because I still have a lot of things to learn. And I invite you to read a little bit more because I wrote some things here that I don't know if I should have written. But it's already published. It's in the Word, cannot do anything. So read. It's the story of my mother, my grandmother, but also Quilombo Água Limpa that resists, and it's in the Laje Hill near Caxambu River. But it's polluted, that I can prove, but we don't have other water. So my elders, they drink this water. The animals drink the waters, and we eat the animals. So it's the same. So I like to say thank you, Floopy. Thank you, Thais. Thank you, each person that called, that responded to my call when I started writing. And when I was preparing this wonderful child that is this book. And I like to say that I'm very proud of me because of this. Thank you, thank you so much to you and to all women. Let's applaud our last panel. We are concluding now. Beatriz Nascimento lives in each of us. Invisibility is in the root of loss of identity. And here we find more than a way to subvert the racist logic, the gender racism, and the academic racism. Hail to the Quilombola women, the 100 black women, the 100 biographers, and I'd like to thank Wandeba that used to talk about women and his relationship with his mother. They say there are many people in a person. We not only leave this place a little bit more Beatriz Nascimento, but also we have inside of us 100 other women that are going to be more in the biographical dictionary. Thank you very much, Flupi, Júlio, all of you, Rosinalda, Professor Thais. I'd like to thank for this opportunity. I also come from a place that it was unthinkable to have women thinking. But we not only think, we do. And let's do even more based on these initiatives. Thank you, women. Let's have our official picture and you can applaud these marvelous women. Applaud yourselves also. Today we became more visible, as Beatriz Nascimento said. You want to talk? Okay, good afternoon. I'm not going to take too long. Truly, I cannot lack talking at this moment. First of all, officially, thank you, CAPES, for sponsoring this event. We are not here without this project that was approved by CAPES. I thank Goiás as the institution that proposed this event that made possible for us to be here. Without this financial support and institutional support, it wouldn't be possible. And obviously, thank you, Floop, all the sponsors that you can see here behind that also contributed very much for this to happen. But I'd like to remind that this is also the Latin American Network meeting about Terreiros feminism. From this network, we see all this movement of women that organize themselves during the time to write and produce and to publicize the story of other women, putting into practice what Beatriz Nascimento used to say. We need to talk about what we are doing. Without this network, I couldn't reach all the other women. So I'd like to name here and thank Tânia Rezende, Jamila Sodré, Carla Miners, Gladys Kesha, Aline Cunha, Núbia Regina Moreira, Joanice Conceição, Rosinalda Corrêa Simoni, Eridan Gutierrez Jesus, and myself that constitutes this network and I'm also part of this story. So I'd like to tell that our principle is that we are protagonists, but we don't shine alone on the stage. We shine together. So in each day we shine more, we bring more women to shine. So thank you very much. For me, this is a dream. I cried a lot. I remembered my mother, my grandparents, my opportunities, the opportunities that I had, and how much they could have reached if they had had our opportunities. Thank you very much. Thank you, Samba. Marvelous. Let's take the official picture. You really marked our being here. So let's, come on, let's take the picture. Everybody on the stage.